Him and Bijan and probably a handful of other running backs, Kendre Miller, are going to save the running back position. This is going to be a historic draft class for running backs. And Brock Purdy, they're Brock hard for Brock Purdy over there in San Francisco. Oh, hello and welcome back to another episode of What Are We Talking About with Jamie Jakes. I am him, and we are recording live in studio Starks Avenue in Dallas, Texas. Welcome back to the show. Today, we are gonna just be you and me talking about a very in-depth fantasy football dynasty startup league that I am about to do the draft for. So we're gonna do a mock draft for that. 34 rounds of absolute excitement. So strap on in for a good time. Probably a lot of the people who are in the draft with me will be one of the only people who watch this episode. So I'm probably screwing myself over there a little bit. Anyways, we got all my friends coming into town tomorrow to do another big episode here in studio. It's gonna be a great time. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. We've got NFL Top 100. We've got Aaron Rodgers. We've got Dalvin Cook. We've got Joe Burrow to talk about. We've got the Lions inside the den to talk about. And maybe if we have time, I will release my personal top 10, top 12 fantasy football rankings overall. So tune in for that, and all the other guys are going to react and probably tell me I'm an idiot. Okay, so we're starting the draft. I am currently picking from the 10th spot. Let me turn down that annoying chatter. Now, I've actually done a mock draft on this platform already. The ADPs are honestly a bit of a joke. They don't really take into account your personal league settings. So my first piece of advice would just be know exactly what platform you're drafting on. Hopefully you're drafting on something like Sleeper, which is a very good platform to be doing this sort of thing on. So I'm gonna probably post each round in this video, edit it through. Early on, you don't really need to click on the positions to scroll all the way down and see what is available and what isn't available. But pretty early on, second, third round, you can really find some really good guys that for whatever reason are just buried deep in this Sleeper platform's ADP system. So I'm sitting here, I'm a big believer of just taking quarterback early on. Justin Jefferson in this mock went 1 overall. Jamar Chase is up there. McCaffrey got taken in the first round. Bijan right before me to take that temptation away from me because I love Bijan. Hopefully he doesn't make it to me in the real draft, although I think there is a pretty good chance that he does. I do also like Jahmyr Gibbs, who will go a little bit later in the draft, so maybe we'll see if he falls to me. Be excited to see that. But right now, I'm pretty much just staring at Justin Herbert or Justin Fields. Both guys who came out of college looking absolutely amazing. I am going to go with the stability long-term of Justin Herbert. Maybe Justin Fields' absolute ceiling is a little bit better. He might also fall back to me here because I do have a quick turnaround drafting at 2.3. So if I get both guys, that would be honestly best case scenario. But I am just going to take Justin Herbert here. 10th ADP, 10th overall, A.J. Brown, C.D. Lamb, and Justin Fields got sniped in make-believe. That is a bummer, but not too much of a bummer because we do have another premium quarterback sitting there right for me. I'm a big believer of taking quarterbacks early and often in these startup drafts. Now, I have put together this league personally, and I've set the roster limits, and the only roster limit I set was for quarterback. There's a new trend going around town, especially on Twitter. You see it a lot where people are complaining about people hoarding quarterbacks, and it is a valid strategy. Like, I'll probably do it here a little bit on this app. Probably won't happen as well in real life. Either way, I'm going to set my limits at 6. So make sure you really dig into, ask those questions to your manager, dig into your rules in your personal league. This one I will put in the description as points per first down, 6-point passing touchdown, -3 interception, -6 pick six. It is individual defensive player. We're kind of phasing out the defensive back position because it's just not great for fantasy. You can draft a defensive back, but you're usually better off just taking a linebacker or a pass rusher, a D lineman in this particular league. So know what you need to know and operate accordingly. But I am definitely just going to take Trevor Lawrence here. There's nobody even on the same planet in terms of a tier as good as for Trevor Lawrence. So I got Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence. I've also built a very highly successful Dynasty league that I'll probably break down exactly how I did it. We had our startup last year, and my team, it's just really, really solid. With a little bit of more luck last year with Week 17, losing Jalen Hurts and losing an entire game of Josh Allen. I have both of them on my team. It did not end my way in the finals, but I got a great team going into next year, so I'll probably break down exactly how I did that. And on that build, I went quarterback to start, and it ended up absolutely fantastic for me. So that's the way I am heading this time. So now, and look who's sitting there for me. Don't tell anybody in my league how much I don't like this guy. Hopefully they don't like them nearly as much as me. It's probably going to be hard for me to get them. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be my clear pick here. Deshaun Watson, I would also consider going quarterback. I don't love that strategy, and the only reason I don't love that strategy is because you're probably going to have a very tough year one, and after that, you're going to be able to trade a lot of those assets and make a super team. I'm not patient like that. Life is too short. I might die before I get a chance to utilize those draft picks. So let's get Jahmyr Gibbs. We're going to go over it next episode when we're just talking shit, but the way the Lions love Jahmyr Gibbs, he I'm pretty sure was above Bijan Robinson in their rankings on their big board. They were totally prepared to take him at 6, and they traded back, and they were biting their fingernails waiting for that pick so they could take Jahmyr Gibbs. They love that guy. Him and Bijan and probably a handful of other running backs, Kendre Miller, are going to save the running back position. This is going to be a historic draft class for running backs, in my opinion, and Jahmyr Gibbs might end up going down in history as the best. Obviously, I think probably Bijan is better than Gibbs, but it definitely could happen. There's no reason it can't. He's a little bit younger than Bijan. I think the only knock on him, which no one really cares about anymore, is his weight coming out of college because he weighed at 199 at the combine, and who cares? Ran a blistering 40. Why would you even care? Take Jahmyr Gibbs. Not worried about David Montgomery, even this year, let alone in the long run. So let's just take him right there. Okay, so Deshaun Watson did make it back to me. I'm looking at some young running backs. So when you take young talent, my theory on this, when you take young talent in a draft like this, you really want to be pretty darn sure about it. So I'm pretty darn sure about Gibbs. I'm rock solid on Trevor Lawrence. I'm rock solid on Justin Herbert, who just got re-signed to a massive contract. Those guys are going to be the guys at their position on their team for a decade. Maybe not Gibbs, but they're quarterbacks. And in Dynasty SuperFlex, once you have those quarterbacks, it really opens you up because everyone knows rookie quarterbacks tend to struggle. Maybe Anthony Richardson can move his feet a little bit and have a good first year. But the other quarterbacks that were drafted extremely high are probably going to have a tough time performing this season. So just taking 2 solid quarterbacks to start your draft, it just makes your life a whole lot easier in the future in your league, because you're not going to have to worry about drafting them. If you do get a high draft pick for whatever reason, you can use it as a luxury pick and take a superstar, Bryce Young, and just put him on your taxi squad or sub him in if you need to towards the end of the season. But it makes your life a whole lot easier when you have 2 rock-solid quarterbacks to start your Dynasty league. So that's why I'm a big fan of just going that direction, especially in that position that I'm drafting. So I do have Deshaun Watson staring back at me, so maybe I do start the quarterback hoarding early. Anthony Richardson, not going to make it back around to me. Tua, I do love Tua. And then you'll start seeing some defensive players, which I'm not a massive fan of taking those defensive players super early when there's just studs all over the place that you can draft in this range of the draft. So with my 4th pick, let's see what happens. Let's hoard some quarterbacks. Let's take Deshaun Watson. He shouldn't be there. He is going to ball out in the first 2 weeks of the season, and maybe I trade him for a superstar young running back later on in like week 3 or week 4. I'm just going to take Deshaun. He's just too good of a value there for me. And in Dynasty, sometimes you just got to take the best player available, especially Dynasty SuperFlex. So that is going to make my job difficult. It's going to require some work on my end to create a trade early on in the season in order to win this season. But man, Deshaun just sitting there, you're paying you're getting the bad guy discount, right? Because nobody wants to cheer for Deshaun Watson. Just draft him, start him if you need to, and don't even watch those games because he's going to score a lot of points this season. So I'm kind of surprised by the guys who made it back around to me. JSN, I'm not a massive fan of JSN. I would consider taking him in this position, though. He is very tempting at his young age, but I also have this young superstar, Jerry Jeudy, not a super consistent wide receiver, but a real heavy hitter, and I only need him to win me a couple games this season where I'm drafting him at 5. So I got 3 super stud quarterbacks to work with. I am going to take Jerry Jeudy here. Maybe they figure it out in Denver this season. Either way, he's going to be a superstar in the league year after year. So I am not worried about it. Okay, so here's where we're starting to get into like the veteran range of things, right? And there is one guy that really, really stands out to me in this range in particular. I'm obviously not looking quarterback. There are some veteran sure things, which it's always good to have a sure thing, especially if you know that veteran's going to be kind of in their prime or kind of on their downslide for the next 2 to 3 years while they're still producing. It's still very valuable. Like 3 years is a really long time, and people in Dynasty kind of forget that. Like just think of how long this one offseason was. It seemed like an eternity, and last offseason seemed even longer. So, sitting around stewing, not winning fantasy football championships in the meantime, I'm not a big fan of. But there is one guy you can kind of get best of both worlds, and that is Dallas Goedert right here. He's a little bit longer in the tooth, but he's not super old. We all know tight ends these days tend to produce into very, very late into their career. Travis Kelce's come out and said they're going to run him until his wheels fall off. He's never retiring. They're going to have to kick him off the field to get him to retire. And Dallas Goedert's no different. He is an absolute superstar talent. He's tied with Jalen Hurts over there in Philadelphia. I think without that injury, he would be getting a lot more hype right now last season. And for that reason, I'm going to take Dallas Goedert right there in the 6th round. I think that is an absolute steal. Okay, so we are in some really, really fun ranges right here with some younger rookie wide receivers. I'm going to take the most sure thing for this season, and honestly, I think going forward, Jordan Addison, he is just going to have a monster season. So he's kind of best of both worlds, where he is a great investment in the long term, while in the short term, he is just going to produce extremely well. Maybe JSN or Quentin Johnston are a little bit better talents than him going into this NFL season. But Jordan Addison, he is just in such a great position to perform this year and succeed extremely well in that offense, filling in for Adam Thielen, who was very inefficient last year but still stayed on the field and just absolutely soaked up a ton of targets. Playing opposite of Justin Jefferson, if you're going to play opposite of anybody in the NFL, it would be Justin Jefferson, because why wouldn't you? He's going to soak up all the double teams. Jordan Addison, still a first-round pick, I think a great talent, and I would be extremely ecstatic with the way this build is going right now. I'm looking to win this year already. By the way, I do have 2 running back slots. I have 2 wide receiver slots and 2 flex spots in this league, along with a 3rd SuperFlex, which obviously I'm going to be playing quarterback all year, even if I do have an injury. Max Crosby sitting there at 88. I do love Max Crosby. This league settings really incentivize getting a lot of sacks. I like Max Crosby. He did get he's hopefully going to get some help on the opposite side of that defensive line for the kid they drafted this year over to Las Vegas. Kirk Cousins, some young quarterbacks. I don't want an aging Cam Akers because who knows what's going to happen this year. Keenan Allen is a very interesting choice here. But you know what I'm going to do is I am going to take breakout candidate for this season. I don't love the situation he's in currently. Just kidding. I was going to say I'm going to take Jahan Dotson. I'm staring at Quentin Johnston. He was my favorite wide receiver, my personal number 1 ranked wide receiver in this draft class. I lost a lot of money betting on him to be the first wide receiver drafted this season, and he did go 1 spot after JSN. So in the eyes of the NFL and me personally, JSN is not on a whole different level, a whole different tier to the rest of these guys. I think Quentin Johnston, there are some reasons not to like him, like his tape out of college. He did have to have Max Duggan throwing him the football, and I think that was a lot more of his issue last year than his production or his skill level. He's electric with his hands in the ball. He's a big body, which is not the norm anymore in the wide receiver position in the NFL. So he is very unique in that aspect. And for that reason, I'm going to take my 3rd wide receiver over Jahan Dotson. I'm going to take Quentin Johnston here at the 8th round. Just an absolute steal, in my opinion. You know, a guy who's going to work his way into the lineup as the year goes on, but in the long run, I think he is just as good of a sure thing as you possibly can. I got 2 first-round wide receivers on my team in Addison, first-round rookies, and Johnston. Okay, so now we're getting into some fun stuff. A couple of quarterbacks are available in this range. Defensive back, which we know we're not taking. David Njoku, which if I didn't grab Dallas Goedert, I would be happy to take in this position. Dalton Kincaid. Another reason I really like taking good tight ends early on is the tight end position is also notoriously difficult to draft as far as rookies go. And I would way rather just spend a free agent signing or a 4th or a 5th round pick on a shot in the dark, because a lot of the time those shots in the dark tend to work out just as well or a little bit better than those premium tight ends historically. There are some more tight ends in this draft class, rookie tight ends, that I do like a little bit more than Kincaid in the long run, and I just don't have to pay up for them, which is why honestly I like them a little bit more. So for that reason, I'm not looking at Kincaid at this current position. And I am scrolling down. David Montgomery would be nice to pair with Gibbs, although that would be kind of silly doing a Detroit double stack at running back. It would be hilarious though, which almost makes me want to do it. But I am going to err on the side of youth in this position. I do need another running back, and I am going to go with Washington Commanders' Brian Robinson with this pick here in the 9th round. Brian Robinson impressed the coaching staff. Now, is that coaching staff going to be around for much longer? Probably not. He did impress the coaching staff so much so that he won the position over established veterans very early on in camp, and then he got shot in the leg twice, came back from that injury, was successful on the field, kind of re-earned that starting position. And I think he's just going to look way stronger, way faster, more explosive, shiftier in a season where he doesn't get shot in the leg twice in the preseason. Just a wild take. I don't know. Take it for what it's worth. So I'm looking pretty good. I'm looking pretty solid here. There are just some guys staring me in the face that are just ultra valuable. David Montgomery did make it back around to me. Zay Flowers has made some real noise in camp, catching a lot of passes, being the best wide receiver on the team. He is a young star. He was probably drafted first round in your rookie drafts if you did have those. I do have Jerry Jeudy, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, so I am very young in the position, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But again, I do like winning year one. I do love David Montgomery. I love some of the quarterbacks that are being drafted in this range, but maybe one of them will make it all the way back around to me. And I would just feel sad if Zay Flowers didn't. So for that reason, I'm just going to stack my team with young wide receivers, with Zay Flowers, and I probably won't have to worry about wide receiver in the long run because, 2 out of 3 of these guys, if they hit big, which I really do believe Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, and Zay Flowers have a great chance to do, I think my team is going to be looking really, really good going forward. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Zay Flowers right there. And and the guy who I wanted made it all the way back around to me. This guy has no choice but to succeed, because if he doesn't succeed, he's going to get his head coach fired. He's going to get his GM fired. He's going to probably restructure the entire organization and how they do things in Green Bay. Jordan Love, I just think he has no choice but to succeed. And where I'm getting him at round 11, he feels a lot like Daniel Jones last season, where I was able to take him, I believe, in the 14th round, and I ended up being able to turn him around into a first-round rookie draft pick. So for that reason, maybe Jordan Love looks really, really good, above average, which is kind of what I'm expecting. I'm not expecting that defense in Green Bay to be worth 2 shits. I think there's a lot of reasons that he can be a solid fantasy football quarterback 2, which in SuperFlex is ultra valuable. Like I said, you could spend 2-3 first-round draft picks, early first-round draft picks, and sometimes it might take a couple of years for those to come to fruition, like with Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, and sometimes you'll just absolutely miss, like on a Kenny Pickett or a Trey Lance. So for that reason, I am going to roll the dice on Jordan Love. I'm a believer in Jordan Love, and if that pays off for me, I am going to be extremely happy and probably turn him into a valuable asset in the future. So how many quarterbacks do I have? So now I have 4 quarterbacks, right? My limit is 6. So I have to keep that in mind, because if I draft too many quarterbacks early, I might miss on some guys that I really like taking extremely late in these drafts. I got another good tight end just staring me in the face in Dalton Schultz. And just a gross mess of other players other than this one guy who, again, I absolutely love. Again, I mean, these ADPs are absolutely silly, so it's not like this is real life. This team would be extremely unfair if we compare it to other teams in this mock draft. But I just have to take this guy because he's an incredible talent, and I think he is going to have a great resurgence in Cleveland now that he got traded there from the Jets. I'm going to take Elijah Moore, an excellent talent. The camp hype is already there. We've got a lot of highlights of them in camp hooking up constantly, and I think he is going to absolutely explode this season for the Cleveland Browns and that high-powered offense. I also technically have that Deshaun, Elijah Moore stack. So I love that as well. I just think that is too good of a value to pass up at that part of the draft. And we're seeing a lot of, so Sam Laporta, very tempting to me over there at Detroit. He is my favorite rookie tight end in the draft because I don't have to pay that Dalton Kincaid, that Bills price to that Bills tax, that Josh Allen tax to get him super duper early. I get him late on a high-powered offense, and that offense, I mean, they're probably going to have to score a lot of points again this season. So I don't think that defense is going to get a whole lot better very quickly. But instead of him, I am going with another rookie. I know, right? But this guy is a long-term, surefire thing. Kendre Miller out of TCU. If he wasn't in this draft class, which I think is going to be a historic draft class for running backs, he would have gone a lot earlier and there would be a lot more hype around this guy. He is just a freak athlete. I think he's going to win the position this year, and if not this year, he'll win it next year when they get Kamara out of there. I think Kamara is still going to get a pretty lofty suspension, if I had to guess, with that serious allegation. He did plead it down to a misdemeanor, but we got to remember, for example, Deshaun Watson wasn't even charged with anything, wasn't indicted with anything, and he got a hefty suspension. Granted, that was a worse crime than, in my opinion, than what Kamara is accused of doing or what Kamara was caught on camera doing. And I'm not a big fan of Jamal Williams. Kendre Miller is just going to take over that backfield in New Orleans sooner than later. And I'm just going to have three great young superstar running backs, which will last me, 6-7 years, which is extremely valuable. It just makes your life a whole lot easier. You can always just rest easy, take the best guy in your rookie drafts, or don't even worry about the rookie drafts. Use those draft picks for real life, sure thing assets, veterans that you can win championships with later on in the season. And guess who made it back around to me? Sam Laporta. Perfect. So I'm going to take Sam Laporta there. More of a shot in the dark, which is round 14. That's where I like to take my shots in the dark, is in that range of the draft where it's like, who knows? This guy could be a superstar. I really believe in him, but I don't feel quite as confident, obviously, as I do in a guy like Kendre Miller. Okay, so getting into some gross stuff here. Bobby Wagner would be a great guy to have on my team. He's an old man, but he would be rather productive. He's going to be back on Seattle. They're going to use him the same way, same, general coaching staff. So I could take my first defensive player here, but I have another guy I have a conviction on, who is Roschon Johnson, back up to Bijan Johnson at Texas University. If you turn on his film looks incredible. In a couple of his highlights, they mistake him for being Bijan because they do have a very kind of similar build, with their helmets on. They're both, buff boys over there for the University of Texas. And I just love the guy. I am not super confident that he is going to win over that starting position. And I'm honestly not even super excited about that starting position in Chicago with Justin Fields taking over a lot of those rushing yards and a lot of the red zone touchdowns. But I'm just gonna bet on talent this late in the draft. It'll pay off for me in the future. Maybe a guy I can stash on my taxi squad for the first season I have him on my roster and use him once he starts blowing up, because I do believe that he eventually will blow up. So now we are looking for some diamonds in the rough. I'm going to take just an ADP thing here. I am going to take Samaje Perine here. Javonte Williams, good news coming out of camp for him. But I just want a guy on my team that I'm going to feel good about starting if I have to. He, honestly, my running back position, Gibbs, Brian Robinson, he might start most of my games for me this season. He's maybe a 1-year rental, but in a 1-year rental situation, maybe I'm looking to win a championship this year, especially if I can offload some of these quarterbacks once the other teams look at their rosters and see what terrible mistakes they made. And for that reason, I'm going to start taking these veterans who I think I can start this year and have great success with. And I'm going to do the same thing with this next pick with Jerick McKinnon out of Kansas City. My favorite Kansas City running back to be taking because he's very cheap. I think he's going to catch a lot of passes in the red zone and make a lot of first downs for me over there at Kansas City. I think he's going to be the highest scoring running back in that backfield this season. I like Jerick McKinnon, another guy I can probably start week 1 and feel great about it, which is awesome for a guy I am drafting in the 17th round in this draft. So this is silly. Brock Purdy sitting here. So earlier I said, remember, I was talking about I don't want to draft too many of my quarterbacks early because I don't want to hit that cap early. So for that reason, I'm going to take Brock Purdy. That's probably some news that we definitely need to cover tomorrow with the guys when they come in. Brock Purdy not even starting the season on the PUP list, which I think we were all expecting, which means his elbow is good to go. He is going to be launching balls all over the field, scoring a lot of touchdowns over there in San Francisco. I don't think there's any reason to doubt Brock Purdy in this moment. So that's a guy I'm really, really excited to be able to take with the 18th pick, a guy I could easily turn into a first-round draft pick after he starts this season, or an asset to go ahead and win a championship this year. Just very silly for Brock Purdy to be going that late in the draft. Of course, you're assuming a little bit of risk, like maybe he doesn't have like a sophomore slump coming off the elbow injury and loses the starting position. But that coaching staff is a big believer in Brock Purdy. They're Brock hard for Brock Purdy over there in San Francisco, the coaching staff, which is why I think Trey Lance truthers are just the dumbest individuals in fantasy Twitter right now. Just shut up about him. The coaching staff told he's only played 4 games and they used such draft capital on him. Like, shut up. Like, the coaching staff said we missed on Trey Lance. He sucks. But we got this guy named Brock Purdy, kind of Kirk Cousins style, coming in for Robert Griffin. He's just going to be the answer in the long run, right? So that's why I'm taking Brock Purdy there. He is going to be a starter in the NFL going forward, hopefully, which I absolutely love. Sam Howell, I'm not a big fan of. Desmond Ridder, I'm not a big fan of. Guys I don't think have quite the same staying power. Mac Jones is an interesting situation. I'm currently out on New England. I think Bill Belichick needs to go. So until then, I am not going to be drafting too many New England Patriots. Jimmy Garoppolo, another guy who I think will just be bouncing back and forth to shitty roster to be a fill-in 1-year rental starter or a backup for the rest of his career. So for that reason, I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo really has the same long-term value as a guy like Brock Purdy does, who I just drafted. So I'm going to take my first shot at defense here and just go ahead and take DeForest Buckner, because why not? The thing about defense is if you really pay attention to the top scorers in your league and are active on the waiver wire, you can pick up a Daron Payne in week 4 when he starts going off and get a really valuable long-term young defensive asset, because not a lot of them are going to get rostered, and it's just not a very predictable position. Offense is not a very predictable position for rookies as it is, but defense even more so. You can find a guy, there'll be a guy who got drafted in the late first round, second, third round, who just balls out this year, and I'll be able to pick him up off of waivers or maybe pick him up later on in the draft here in a couple of rounds. So getting a good stable guy to serve as the foundation of your couple of defensive slots. We have 3 in our league: a flex, a linebacker, and a defensive lineman. So getting one good guy to kind of anchor your roster with is great. So I love DeForest Buckner here in round 19. Love that I got him here when, probably the first defensive player who was drafted 5.1. Guys who went after him: George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, J.K. Dobbins, Tua Tagovailoa went after Micah Parsons, Christian Watson, Javonte Williams. Yeah, that's between you and Jesus. He's going to score a lot of points, granted, but at what cost? To what end? Taking him there. Okay, so we're here in round 20, and I'm having just an absolute good time. And the first time I did it, we did a long draft. We did 8-hour draft picks. The first time I did it, I'm like, man, I'm probably going to be bored after round 20, and I am just like still chewing my fingernails, hoping my guy falls to me here in the 20th round. And I think another guy did. I'm going to take another young rookie tight end. Probably just stash one of these guys in my taxi squad. I'm going to take Luke Musgrave. He is going to be probably the tight end one over there in Green Bay. I think they announced it. I already have Jordan Love, so I'm a believer in that offense. Luke Musgrave, why not? I think Laporta is probably a little bit better talent than him, but I'm getting him in the 20th round. So taking a shot at Luke Musgrave there. Probably going to stash him on my taxi squad. I need to fill those slots anyway, so why not take a young potential superstar, someone who can develop into something pretty incredible in just a few years. Okie dokie. So let's probably take maybe more of a safer pick here. Oh, no. There's another young freak running back I need on my team, Jaylen Warren. A guy I think is going to earn a heavier role this year and eventually take over for Najee. Yeah, so I'm going to have a couple of really, really fun years. Maybe if they do fix that offensive line over there in Pittsburgh, I think Jaylen Warren, just betting on talent, getting that sort of talent this late in the draft, the guy who's going to be in the NFL going forward, maybe will be a handcuff quarterback or handcuff running back his whole life. And best case scenario, a guy who can start like an Alexander Madison type for a couple of years, earn that starting position over the course of a few years. And a guy did fall to me who I do really like, a couple of veterans fell to me. I'm going to play the ADP game here and take the guy who I like a little bit less, but is going a little bit earlier in ADP. I'm going to take Donovan Peoples-Jones here. A guy who I think will serve as wide receiver 3 over there at Cleveland. He'll have great games. He'll be startable, especially for Amari Cooper. I have Elijah Moore on my roster already, so if Elijah Moore goes down with injury, I have Donovan Peoples-Jones. I can just fill in right to his spot if I need to in terms of injury. So a little bit of a strategy pick there, and a guy who I do legitimately love as a talent and just the opportunity he's going to get over there in Cleveland. I think keeps his ceiling relatively high and his floor relatively high. Another veteran I'm going to go with. I love stacking, again, my lineup with veterans who I think I'm going to be able to start in this season, even if they are a 1-year rental or a 2-year rental. Why not take a guy who could fill in for you in a flex spot or even fill in a wide receiver 1 spot for you or wide receiver 2 spot for you later on in the season with some injuries. Michael Gallup here at round 23. Reports Camp Hypes is all behind Michael Gallup. I think that offense is still going to be explosive whether you like it or not over there in Dallas this year. And now I'm stewing on what am I going to do next. I believe I am going to go ahead and grab Zay Jones. Another wide receiver, I think, veteran wide receiver, I think, could really start shining late on in the season if Christian Kirk or Calvin Ridley go down with injury. Remember, Calvin Ridley is coming off of basically like 2 years of no football, so maybe he has some soft tissue issues early on in the season, and Zay Jones fills in a super high-powered offense over there in Jacksonville, Florida. So for that reason, I'm going to take him there. And you know what? This is getting a little bit out of hand here, ADP-wise. So how many quarterbacks do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 quarterbacks. I'm going to take a guy who made the Pro Bowl his rookie year, had Matt Patricia as his offensive coordinator his second year, did not go well. Mac Jones, maybe he can turn it around. Maybe he can be a long-term starter in this league. And even if he's going to be a bottom half quarterback or a middling quarterback where I'm getting him at 25, that's somebody I can still turn into a second round draft pick, a first round draft pick later on. So for that reason, I'm going to take Mac Jones. It just is too good to pass up at 25, at round 25. Oh boy, and we've got some fun guys. I'm going to start really rolling down and just rapid firing here if I see a guy that I like. I like Michael Wilson. Like the talent. Guy I might start on my taxi squad, a guy I might pull out of that taxi squad once Kyler starts and takes over for Clayton Tune, who I do also love as kind of a super duper dark sleeper, dark horse candidate to be a fantasy asset moving forward. So I love Michael Wilson. His talent, he was one of my favorite wide receivers coming out of the NFL or coming out of the draft this year. Guy I can draft on that, I can stash on that taxi squad for a period of time, which I love. So I'm going to take Michael Wilson there. He is just too good of a talent. Maybe not someone who's going to shine early on, but someone who will in the long term, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I do have 6 quarterbacks. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which is why it is important, because if I could take my guy I want, I'm not going to tell you even about him. I'm going to keep it a secret because I know these guys are going to be in my league, are going to be watching this video. So I'm not even going to tell you about it, who I like there. But you know who I do like? An old man. I'm going to take an old senior. Taysom Hill. Tight end, I think I can fill in if I need to. My second veteran tight end on this roster, Dallas Goedert. A guy, if Dallas Goedert goes down, I can fill in a guy who's going to have some massive weeks. You know, obviously I love him more in best ball where I don't have to start him, because he's going to have some stinkers of weeks. But for the next 1 or 2 years, I think Taysom Hill is going to be an excellent spot start guy and a guy who can help you win a championship, which I am looking for any help I can get in the 27th round of this startup draft. Absolutely love it. I got some rookie running backs, so I'm not quite as excited about. So I am just going to go to individual defensive player, Montez Sweat. Youngish guy over there in Washington, was one of my favorite pass rushers in that draft class, and a guy they have invested in. I love Montez Sweat. Why not? Why not fill in my flex spot defensively at this late in the draft? Again, just another reason. Like, he's a great athlete. He's one of the best pass rushers in the league. He's in a great situation over there in Washington. The defense is going to be on the field a lot, I think, this year. So I think, again, a guy who next year we could be taking way earlier, kind of like a Max Crosby type that's just going super early in drafts where you could get him super duper late this time last year in startup leagues. So I love Montez Sweat where he's going. Oh boy. Let me scroll down, see if there's any last ditch offensive players I like at all. Van Jefferson, he could produce this season, and I could use him with how young I am as a roster as a whole. So I'm going to do a little bit of a strategy thing here, I think, again. And I am going to take, not DJ Chark, not KJ Osborne. I am going to take Puka Nacua, another guy like a Michael Wilson type that just kind of went really under the radar in the draft process, in the Dynasty draft process, honestly. I think he is super just a super stud in a great situation over there. I believe in their backup quarterback in the long term. I believe in their starting quarterback currently. He gets to learn under one of the best wide receivers, the second best wide receiver in the NFL, Cooper Kupp. Over there, if Cooper Kupp goes down, he is going to have a massive season. Puka Nuka Nakua. I love, and just to be safe, I am going to take probably the guy he will be playing under for the beginning of the season, a very light room, so a short-term pick here that I'm going to mix in with my long-term Dynasty roster, Van Jefferson, to pair with Puka Nuka Nakua over here in round 30. And we are coming to an end. We got 3 rounds left. If you are still here with me, I'm having a good time. I'm chewing my fingernails, waiting to see who's going to fall to me next. And I think I am going to be taking a defensive player again. Let's see what super freak stud I can find. Von Miller, a guy who, if he has 2 or 3 years left in the league, will be an amazing value at 31. Is there any other defensive guys I absolutely love at this spot? I could use another linebacker, but nobody is really getting me going. Nobody is really turning me on at this part of the draft defensively. So let's scroll on over to running back, tight end, wide receiver. The flex position is what we're looking into. And let's just go ahead and get another veteran on the roster, a guy I can fill in early on in the season, a guy who has got a high ceiling for as late as he's going. DJ Chark, You know, granted, he's got a rookie quarterback throwing the ball this year, so the chances of that working out for me are pretty slim. But who knows? I think he's got some juice left in that body. I think he could perform for 2 or 3 more years at a high level. So I'm going to take DJ Chark, right there. And there's a guy who has really fallen in this draft in particular, a guy who I thought had some pretty good tape coming out of college. His team used, for them, high draft capital because they drafted or used a lot of their draft capital into Deshaun Watson. Cedric Tillman, wide receiver. A guy, I have a lot of Cleveland Browns on this team, so maybe a guy who can work his way up in the depth chart if there are some injuries, and maybe a guy who could have a big second or third year breakout for Cleveland if they do kind of move on from Amari Cooper or Elijah Moore in the future. So why not a guy I can stash on my taxi squad, which is really valuable, taking Cedric Tillman there at 33rd round. Okay. Another veteran I really love, a guy I can probably start for the next couple of years, maybe a guy who can really find his home in New England. They do have a new offensive coordinator, so why not take Mike Gesicki, add some depth to my tight end room. A great talent, and I just love getting a guy who's that talented in round 34 of a dynasty draft, because again, it's very hard to predict the future. So if you are thinking 4, 5, 6 years in advance, that's between you and Jesus, you know? Oh boy, so we got Darnell Washington on an offense I do not want any part of outside of Jaylen Warren. Curtis Samuel in Washington, Chase Claypool, who is dead to me as a fantasy player. Go start doing podcasts. You'll probably be better off doing that. Josh Palmer, he'd be wide receiver 4 for LA. Doesn't really get me excited that much. Ty Chandler, let's take another, I think, I'm going to take 2 kind of high-end old men here. Tim Patrick, Fireball Jones, as they call him, the fantasy footballers, and I am chewing my fingernails hoping this guy makes it back around to me. Where did he go? I lost him. Tyler Conklin. Catching passes, maybe be the tight end one in New York, and we've seen Aaron Rodgers turn far less talent into fantasy assets, especially at the tight end position. So why not take Conklin, a guy maybe has a big boom week, I can turn into a future asset, or a guy who can just be a solid foundational aspect of my team in that tight end position. I do have very young tight ends. I took 2 rookie tight ends, so maybe I just stashed them away in my bottom part of my roster. And, this is not how, if this is how my draft goes IRL, this league isn't going to be very fun because I'm going to win every single week. But I'll try and post the whole draft in its entirety in my chat. But I do have an absolutely phenomenal team. I'll tell you in order of how I drafted them. I have Justin Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Jahmyr Gibbs, Deshaun Watson, Jerry Jeudy, Dallas Goedert, Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston, Brian Robinson. I wish he was Bijan Robinson in the 9th round where I picked him. Zay Flowers, Jordan Love, Elijah Moore, Kendre Miller, Sam Laporta, Roshan Johnson, Samaje Perine, McKinnon, Purdy, Buckner, Musgrave, Jalen Warren, Peoples-Jones, Gallup, Zay Jones, Mac Jones. So obviously I do have a great potential to have a Jones pun for my team name, which is also helpful. Michael Wilson over there in Arizona, Taysom Hill, Montez Sweat, Puka Nacua, Van Jefferson, Von Miller, DJ Chark, Cedric Tillman, Mike Gesicki, Tim Patrick, and Tyler Conklin. A superstar lineup where I would probably win year 1, year 2, year 3, and then on that average, I wouldn't have to win for the next 36 years, and I would still be profitable in this league. So there you go. I will probably create a couple Dynasty SuperFlex videos after this. So be on the lookout for probably tips on how to start a Dynasty league, because I do have a lot of thoughts on that. I think there's a lot of interest in it, and I think it is a very, very fun format for fantasy football. But if you know what you're doing and you start the league out right, it will lead to a long-term success, because, fantasy leagues, Dynasty leagues do die, and that is very sad to see, especially when people are planning out years in advance. I will probably also do how I built, it'll be a super clickbaity video, just like this one, how I built a superstar roster, because I do have a very, very good Dynasty team going into next season. We should be probably favored to win the whole damn thing. So be on the lookout for that. And also be on the lookout for the big show. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Tell me if you think I'm smart. Tell me if you think I'm an idiot. Tell me if you are gonna snipe me now because you're in my Dynasty League where we are drafting in just a few days. My name's Jamie Jakes. This has been What Are We Talking About with Jamie Jakes. Good night.